maybe I will just let it play for like the whole episode is just the listening party.
That works.
I should have faded that out or something, but whatever.
I thought it just
Welcome
stopped that
to What
way.
the Heck. How are y'all doing tonight?
Howdy.
Hey,
Good.
Boom, that sounded awesome. Love it. I mean, you really could have played that for the next hour. I would have been very happy. No disrespect to everybody else, but that was sounding good.
It's such a good sound. It's like the warmest. Anyway,
Thank
Heck
you.
7. This is What the Heck. We talk about Modular. Today we have Woke Guy, Frederick's Foxtrot, Antone, and Alex. And we're going to talk pretty much about Antone's music for at least the first part of it, because holy crap, it is good.
Yo, Hex 7, I like, you know me, I'm always going to just derail stuff for a minute. It's the way that it goes.
Starting early. We haven't even done introductions yet.
Yeah, totally. So before all of the intros, before all of that, we're going to get to it. I'm just going to say congrats on that set that you pulled off at Frequency Boutique a couple of nights back. The backstory for anybody that's listening is that, as I understand it, is that you got pulled in last minute because maybe somebody dropped out. I'm not sure about that part. And you just said, yeah, sure, what the heck? Yeah, I'll get it done. And
I
you
was like
came
the
on.
second or third backup or whatever the last backup was, so I'd written off the show completely.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, and it was sweet. I watched that and heard that live, and there were some other EMSs there, but like you killed it. You killed it, and congratulations. That was awesome.
thank you.
Here.
I got to say, everyone
man.
else, like, that was a stacked show. It was amazing. Forrestein's set was amazing, and Stu J. Yeah, it was very cool. Watch it. It's on the Colorado Modular Synth Society channel. It's Frequentique 57, I think. All right, let's do introductions. So, who are you, and what's your favorite soundtrack? I'm Heck 7. My favorite soundtrack is The Fountain, because there's that one song on it that has that, I don't know, repeating melody that gets super big at the end. I don't know. It's perfect for going to space dreams.
I'm Alex Barnett. Favorite soundtrack that comes to mind right now is Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, which was a David Bowie movie that he starred in. I don't think he was involved in the music, I'm not sure. But I love that soundtrack as a movie soundtrack. It was awesome.
I'm Frederick Foxtrot. This is the worst question you could ever ask anyone because there's so many good ones. It's like one of my favorite genres. But I'll say like recently, the Uncut Gem soundtrack is what is like absolutely is what I think is of like the modern synth soundtrack or soundtrack in general, but certainly in our kind of business. But yeah,
I'm Woke Ass Messiah. I wish I could hear
he's,
myself.
Doing code.
Yeah. So my favorite soundtrack, I think, is probably the Peter Gabriel's Passion soundtrack. I've always been really into that one.
So I'm Antone Real. Soundtrack is a really tough question for me because I go through them a lot. My video got super. Oh, okay. Yeah. The thing that came to mind rather than my favorite soundtrack, I will say, is the soundtrack that made me sort of realize the direction that I was going in my life to get into this industry. So that would be the Danny Elfman's Batman soundtrack. I was like 10 years old, and we went and saw it opening weekend. My friend dragged me there, and by the end of the opening credits, I was like, oh, this is my future. So that kind of falls there. And then just to sort of like throw out something a little newer, the Remember Me soundtrack, the video game soundtrack, was very cool. Anything that has Owen Martineau is amazing. And if you guys haven't heard that soundtrack, I can't remember the composer's name off the top of my head. Anyway, he recorded orchestra with the intention of doing a glitch soundtrack. So it's live orchestra that has been glitched.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And that soundtrack is incredible. Yeah. It's one of the cool ones that I've heard lately. So yeah, go check out that one.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I love that. I only know none of those, and I actually don't. That's probably true. And then a quick shout out for those that are watching live. So there's Cauldron of Bats, BB Bartok, Enthusiastic Electrons. Who else have we got here? TB. Thank you all. Anton. There we go. Like Bandit. Thank you all for like tuning in and doing stuff. And probably half of them are already here. Like I just don't know the names, but like appreciate you all, and just keep asking questions, and the rest of it we're keeping an eye on it. Sorry, X7.
For what? I mean, shout out to the audience. Great. All right. Let's get into it. Like that opening song is it's from the most recent soundtrack from Antone, and I think Antone's a good name because you had like some seriously
Mad
good
tone.
tones. I'm sure that pun has never been done.
Never.
Sorry.
I think the first time was probably 6th grade in band class.
Wow.
And I don't want to tell you how many decades ago that was. So too many decades ago. So but it's funny for the people that do sort of use that as a way to remember my name. They tend to say it once. It's kind of a joke kind of early on, and then they never say it. So it's actually been maybe 10 years since someone has used that joke again recently. How's that? Does that make you feel better?
It's
so
well
juvenile.
Okay, and I think the last person to use it, honestly, like the last person to use it for me was Mike Patton. So that was his way also of remembering my name.
Yeah, I was trying to make sure. Yeah.
So you're in good company. I mean, unless
good. All right. Woke Ass Messiah. The reason Antone is on the show this week is because I was like, who should be on the show? And Woke Ass Messiah was like, you should get Antone.
Well, Anton and I were in a chat, and I mentioned it. He had shared his new album with me, the new soundtrack, and so we were just chatting it up, and I got to thinking that he'd be a great guest on the program because we've met online before. We had a nice conversation back in the fall when the Modular Modcast had its inaugural one and only like album listening, which I thought was really cool. That was a lot of fun. Yeah.
I'd like to do that again once my TV show's over.
Yeah.
What's stopping y'all from doing like a Bandcamp listening party, on the EMS stream? Grab some Modular artists, do it once a month.
Absolutely nothing is stopping anybody from doing that.
Let's do it.
We need a volunteer and a name with a pun in it. I'm not volunteering. Yeah. So what questions did you have, Woke? You sounded stoked to ask about uh, film and video game scores, and I know very little about this, so I'm just
I
here
do.
to learn.
I know very little about it too, which is kind of why it was interesting to me. One, just a couple things I have to say about it is I'm not a video game player at all. I don't know anything about video games. When I started hearing stuff about video game soundtracks, like a few years ago, my first thought was, what? I mean, when I did play video games, I was probably like 12, and it was an Atari 2600. So that's where I'm coming from in that realm. And I don't listen to a ton of movie soundtracks either, so it's really kind of a realm that I don't know anything about. I did recently get hold of some footage that I shot like in 1990, and of course my thought was I want to score this. It's like 3 minutes or something, but I have no idea where to start. I have no idea like how to even like wrap my brain around it. So one of my questions is, how do you wrap your brain around trying to create music to accompany somebody else's vision?
Yeah, that is kind of the question of the day. Like anytime, I would say any project, you're going to get that question, and every project is going to be different. And what it really, so for film, what you really need to understand is you need to understand the story that the filmmaker is trying to convey. And so a lot of people like to start with things like the script and look at the story from that way. I personally don't find that very inspiring myself, but what I like to do is talk to someone and ask them, what emotion should you be feeling at this moment? So we'll kind of early in the process, we'll do a spotting session, and basically what we do is we sit down and we watch the movie multiple times, and then we go in and we mark throughout where some music is going to go. Like this scene needs music, this scene doesn't need music, and then I really focus on trying to get the emotion that they want to convey at that moment. And then I'll usually kind of sit and watch a scene 5-10 times, just over and over. And then, I don't know, I just think about what kind of music would make me feel the way that I'm expected to feel in that moment. And then I'll kind of, play around with those concepts and then come back and try it. And just like, I'll just lay something down and then try it over the scene. If it works, then I'll try to kind of like resynchronize or refit them together.
Sure, to fit the timeline or whatever.
Yeah, early on in my career, there were these moments where I would be like, okay, I want this scene to have all of this drive, and I'm going to find the exact tempos to hit all of these points, which is it's very Bugs Bunny, in the industry we call it Mickey Mousing, which is when you hit every single little change and every little move. Sure. And I mean, what it's like when something is Mickey Mouse.
Great at that.
He was phenomenal, and especially when you realize that the way that he was timing all of that was using calculators and these but not like normal calculators, like books with like references, and you're like, here's the tempo you need to go for this, and then literally burning marks in the film to be your click track, so that you would have crazy amounts of work in order to get those tempo changes. So early on in my career, I was like, okay, I want this to happen, and I'm going to do like a time change here, and it's going to be this and this and this. And I found if I tried too hard to really like score a scene like that ahead of time, that it would distract me from that emotional aspect. So
Sure.
so I really kind of took a step back and was like, okay, here's the idea, and then write for 2 hours, 4 hours, and then see if it's working, and then kind of come back to it.
So when you're writing for 2 hours, are you like, how old school are you? Are you sitting down there and writing for 2 hours, or are you like, this is how I write?
Yeah. All of the above. Okay. So it depends on the score, and I think most people kind of here, at least in this group, have heard sort of the electronic stuff that I've done, but I do have like a classical background as well, and have notation in, I've come back from like a walk. I'll hear something in my head and I'll write out the parts, without. That doesn't happen as often as I'd like to believe it should, but yeah. But it's both. I mean, I really enjoy writing down what I hear, but I also really enjoy the experimentation of the modular, and so it's actually really become a big part of my work for the past like 2.5, 3 years, is to include that interactive element that the modulars bring in. And I'm actually really excited to take some of the things that happen in the electronics and then bring them back to an orchestral setting, an orchestral situation. So there are some composers that have done that a lot, really well. There's a bunch of YouTube videos about people that do it really well, and sometimes it's amazing, and sometimes it just sounds awful. So
right.
Yeah. That's kind of the.
I really like that one. I can't remember the name of the group. I think they're called Acoustica. Did you ever hear of Acoustica?
I don't think I have.
They did live scoring of Aphex Twin tunes.
Oh, cool.
And it sounds amazing. I actually first heard it, I think, as like bumper music on NPR like years ago. And listening to it, I'm like, what the hell is this? And I think I like searched it or something, and it came up with that. But yeah, check that out. You might dig that.
Yeah.
Acoustica, definitely. With a K, K-A.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds familiar, but
it's wild. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So one of the things. So this is the extent of knowledge I know about film scoring. I've seen the first 4 lessons of Hans Zimmer's masterclass. And Zimmerman?
Hans Zimmer.
Hans Zimmer.
Yeah. I thought, okay. And it's amazing because I could listen to this person talk about literally anything, because he sounds like he's telling you a secret with every single thing he says. He's like, it's just 2 notes. Like you get so excited about like every sentence that it makes you excited.
Like to get him and Werner Herzog in a masterclass together.
Right, but I have
right.
I have watched a lot of movies and I have played a lot of video games, and I find that some of them, like, they're defining, like, their signature character is the soundtrack, and I could rattle off a bunch, like. Going old school, like you've got Mario. Newer, you've got like the I think Doom 3 was the first one where they had like a killer soundtrack to scare the absolute bejesus out of you, and like The Fountain's a great movie. Well, it's an okay movie with an amazing soundtrack, right? And like you're saying, I think some of the best soundtracks are the ones that they don't direct your attention to the soundtrack, right? They're building up the entire experience, right? Like if I'm playing a video game and the soundtrack's too good, like I want to say Brutal Legend or something, where it's like playing heavy metal the whole time, like at some point in that game when you're looking for whatever secret or whatever the thing is, you're like, oh god damn it, I've listened to this song 47 times today. mute. Like that's a bad soundtrack.
Well, this is what's interesting between like, let's say, what's it called, a Grand Theft Auto or something like that, where you have explicit songs that go play through a functional machine in the game, like a radio or something like that, and then other like video games, which it's really like, I just got done playing through Control on PlayStation, and like that soundtrack is like a character in the thing itself, in the game itself.
Yeah,
or like Ocarina of Time, the Legend of Zelda game, where you literally are like playing an ocarina and that makes things happen in the game, you know. So
right, exactly. So there's times when the sound is part of the game, and that was what I was going to come to next is like the movies, or like the movies where there's an action scene and like every major punch is like timed with the drum. Like every movie trailer ever does this, right? Like it's just going to be like bam, 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 Batman. You know, like you got that kind of a soundtrack too.
Movie trailers are an interesting one. A friend of mine is kind of we went to college together, and he's kind of one of the guys in that industry right now. And it's a really interesting thing because they build all of these tools, these like they're almost more sound design than they are music for the trailers, and then they build the timing, and then they cut the trailers to the music, and that's why you can get these really like aggressive.
Oh, sure.
And it's a really cool sound design trick. I there's a whole bunch of things, like they call them rises and beds, and there was that great Make Noise video, probably like in the fall, where he made a rise using maths, and I went and I made a rise. It was like a 9-minute rise using maths, and it used every single cable that I own. And I sent it to my friend who does it. He's like, this is really cool. And I was like, it's one patch. And he was like, what? He was like, I need to know this. And then that was the last time we talked about it. But
what was the movie? I think it was you that mentioned. Is it called Little Gems? With Adams.
Uncut Gems. Uncut Gems, yeah.
Yeah, that really struck me as an amazing soundtrack. And I remember it in my radar. There was a trailer, but like, I think when you're doing modular synthesis, you almost recognize the sound, which is an interesting thing in its own right. But I there is a YouTube video, and it's a good one. It's probably about 30-40 minutes long, maybe even longer, with the composer and
Daniel Lopatin. Yeah.
And it's a great video to check out, and their approach to it. And they've got this, I remember seeing it months and months ago, just like this. And then you're looking at this modular rack, and it's like, wow, this was amazing and awesome. And what I enjoyed about the movie, when I overanalyzed it, of course, I watched that third time, paying more attention to the soundtrack is exactly the opposite of Mickey Mousing, that phrase that was said earlier. This thing, the sounds and the timbre and the mood were just, there was dissonance there that made it really interesting. Like the music and the ambience from the previous scene was carrying over longer than you would expect as you're going into the next scene, and there's a switch in the energy of the movie. And it was just like, wow, that's awesome. Like, and it sounded amazing. It sounded beautiful, but I was really, So I was just saying, well, you just shut randomly.
I want to talk about the Rockettes real quick. They're the group of beautiful people who, all kick together at the same time. Like, that's their thing, to make a line of kicks, right? And it wouldn't work if like one person's kicking way higher. It would just look really awkward and sort of lame. Like, I remember in high school seeing something like that. Like, people were messing around and doing that. Like, it just doesn't look the same if somebody kicks too high. And my point is, like, in that movie, like, everyone's kicking the same level to make everything sort of cohesive, instead of like the soundtrack being like, look at me, look how cool this synth sound is, you know, like it's not taking over, it's working as part of the package.
Yeah, for sure.
But I wanted to loop back to like those action sequences or movie trailer type things where you're working sort of with the director to do these like very timed sequences. Do you ever do anything like that, like Anton? Like work with them instead of scoring it after everything's edited? Like, are you working with them to build it as it's?
Is it like a kind of Foleying?
Well, it's not quite as incredibly precise as Foleying, but definitely I have worked with them, and sometimes if they really want something to be tied to a scene, we'll do a prelay, like we'll record the music or a click track, or something where they time the music ahead of time, but that's not really what happens most of the time. Most of the time, what you'll get is the editors are working with temp music. So let's say an editor loves the action scene from some other movie. What they'll do is they'll throw it in Avid or whatever editor they're using, and they'll literally cut the scene so that it makes sense over this amazing action sequence, and then like it works really well to that tempo. And most of the time what you have to do is say, okay, this is the tempo of the scene. Now I'm going to write something that matches at least that tempo.
Right.
So,
that's awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's it's a hard thing as well, because what happens is that the editor and the director have watched that version with the temp music, I don't know, 200-300 times before it gets to you, and then when you start working on it, you're starting from a blank palette, and you're like, here's my MIDI mock-up, and they're like, it just doesn't sound as good as the temp did. Can you make it sound more like the and right. So that's always that.
They're not ready to hear your music. In their head, it's solidified that the temp music is what they're getting. Like, they just want you to make the temp music but different,
But these are like how the structural features like replicate genre in a weird way, right? Like the idea that there would be these little things that no one would ever think about in the sense of like, this is a cognitive, creative choice I'm making for the benefit of this film or something like that, whereas if this is happening in production after production, then you're going to have these kinds of archetypes or just these certain things kind of gel and have a certain kind of gravity of their own, I guess.
Yeah,
totally.
So there's a combined question that's coming in from TB and Enthusiastic Electrons on the YouTube chat. You kind of covered it, but maybe just to recap, Anton, on this is like, do you write things down or pre-think the soundtrack, or do you just kind of like sit down and just make it spontaneously? And how frustrating is that? And if both, which seems better?
I think Enthusiastic Electrons is asking how frustrating temp music is in that whole experience. But
we'll just say temp music is both amazing and the worst thing I've ever experienced.
But who produces the temp music?
Any previous soundtrack. So
right, so it's just like literally I go to like Jean-Claude Van Damme's like Bloodsport or whatever, and then I just put that in there.
Music.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking when you were saying that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And just to sort of, I'll finish that thought and then I'll come back and answer the question. Is that because they've used all this music and there's all these timings that are set to a tempo that you didn't necessarily imagine. There's actually a lot of really interesting polyrhythmic and like metric modulation things that you have to sort of like do to make music work. So what'll happen is like the editors will edit a scene and they'll like make everything work with their temp music, and then you write music that matches that temp music, and you're like, this is perfect. And then they're like, oh, we decided to take out 10 frames here, and we added a minute later, but it's only a few seconds here and there. And what you do is you go in and you're like, well, now my straight eighth note click doesn't work. So then you have to go in and you write these like weird, these like, I could do like here's my 13/8, like here's my 7/8, here's my 5/8, and you do these like things, and then that becomes part of the soundtrack that you've made these weird things, and then another editor uses that weird tempo with these like sort of hiccup or however you want to think of these asymmetrical meters happening, and then that sort of propagates down the line. Additional soundtracks that use that as a temp, you have to follow it because that's the way that the picture
exactly it's like the Mystic writing pad, like
exactly. It's like Rings into Clouds but for film scoring.
Here's another quick question.
Yeah.
Another quick question. Do you walk down the street, whistle something, and then rush home and then magically turn it into a MIDI file?
Yes, I have done that. So I mean that answers the other question. Sort of, I do both. Sometimes I will hear something in my head, and I'll write it down, and then it will become something. And then sometimes I'll just turn on the picture and just play it over and over and noodle around on my piano sound until I'm like, oh, this is the direction I want to go. So I like being able to take us down both choices. Both roads yield useful results. And especially once you're sort of into a project after a certain amount of time, you maybe have a theme that you've written early on in the movie. Well, now you're hearing that theme come back. So, how can I've written something that's like, here's my electronic version with like a crazy super saw lead, and okay, now I'm going to use that same sound and I'm going to use ethnic wood flutes, and it's still the same melody, but you have like a different mood, and that's definitely a way when I hear things ahead of time is just by listening to to what I've already done. So
that's cool. I'm gonna derail this a little bit. I looked at your website.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
And then I clicked on that blog link at the top, which I think was probably last updated the last time I posted on a blog. So it's been a while. But it was talking about Receiver, the first video game.
The first video. Yeah.
Right. And I didn't realize this at first. I didn't even check the date. I just clicked play on the YouTube video and started listening until I noticed that the 2 was missing. But I did watch a good amount of the video, and in it you were talking about how you made the soundtrack, and in it you were saying that you and the video game developers, yes. Video game maker people wanted there to be sort of conditional soundtrack, like you've got maybe an overlaying sound and the sound changes based on events in the game. Is that something you did with Receiver 2?
Yes. So actually, okay. So I'm going to preface this in a weird way, because I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the game. So Receiver, the first game, was a game that we did in something called a game jam, which is basically make a game in 7 days. And so basically we were working kind of like long days making this music, and the game, there were 2 devs that I was working with, the sort of the coder and then the artist. And the artist had a lot of the conceptual elements to what the story was going to be. And the game designer, the game dev, was really focused on the mechanics of the game. And so I wrote some music that kind of fit the game, and then the artist was like, hey, come back and add this spiritual level. I want something emotional that comes out of it. So you kind of add these new layers as you go. And then on day 6 out of 7, the developer's like, hey, I was thinking we should make the score interactive. Can you turn this into layers? Which is what you're talking about now. So I went back and I sort of broke down the track that I had made, and it fell pretty easily into 5 layers. That basically what it is it's a 5-minute loop.
It's like remixing on the fly or something.
It remixes on the fly. So
okay.
Basically, it's just like someone who has, their mixing board. They just fade in their different layers as they're going, and so depending on what's happening in the game fades up the music, yeah. So having done that on the first game, so that was in 2012 is when we did that, and then we finished another game during that time. And then we came back and we're like, hey, we're going to do a sequel. We're going to flesh out this game that we did in a week, which actually ended up being a really popular game. So we're like, okay, let's come back. We're going to revisit this game. We're going to build it into a much bigger, much more complete game. And my interpretation of what the music that I wrote the first time around completely changed for the second time, because I knew and had like 6 or 7 years worth of playing the original game. So it's like I was able to come back to this idea that I had been playing with. And so as we started to get closer, it was around the same time that I was starting to get into modular. And I was like, okay, the original game was mostly electronic, and now I'm playing with this new modular gear. How can I what modules can I buy so that I can do that same layering effect with the modular, within the modular? So it ended up.
Setup.
What's that?
I said, rate my setup.
Yeah. So at the time when the first game came out, it was like a Model D, and because in the original game I had used the Arturia Model D Moog, so I was like, okay, I'm going to get a analog Model D, and then I ended up getting a grandmother before I finished, and so those two kind of really created a lot of the same sounds from the previous game. And then I had done all of these loops to create these ambient beds for sort of the lowest droning things. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get an arbor, and I put the arbor in, and like we were about 3 weeks away from finishing when I bought the arbor, and I went back and I redid everything using this granular, I was like, yes, everything is last minute. I rewrote a synth. There was the first soundtrack, which you guys may or may not have heard as much. It has a lot of like arpeggios and like kind of plucky sounds, and I just hated one of the tracks. Like at the last minute, I was like, I hate this, and I rewrote it. Like the night before I turned it in, I was like, oh, there's maybe some changes in here, but it kind of, I don't know, it kind of worked. And the modular thing, I was still learning modular, so I would build a patch, record a layer, and destroy the patch, and like build something new, record another layer, and then destroy it, and then so it was a really it was a fun way to learn my gear in a very sort of explicit way. So and then the expansion soundtrack, which is the one that came out last week, those tracks do not play as layers. It's actually in the game, it's a selectable radio style soundtrack. So there's like an intercom that plays throughout the place, and you can go and pick what station you want to listen to. So, so the track that we played at the beginning of the event tonight was not dynamic in that sense. So that was a lot of talking.
It rules. We do have some audience questions, but before I get into those, do you have any more questions, Frederick or Lucas?
Oh yeah,
or
I get
Alex?
it. Well, I mean, I was going to say that, and we kind of looping back to where we started about how like in some way it's like it's not too distracting. It's almost like very tightly following Eno's dictum of like it's like interesting if you listen to it, but if it can also just be ignored in a way. It's just there. But at the same time, I do feel that like I don't know, just the synthesizers in general seem to have this kind of, they lend themselves to this kind of work in a way. And I know you've done a lot of other stuff in more traditional composing, but like thinking about Vangelis or like even Tangerine Dream or any of these early synth kind of like groups who then almost immediately kind of became involved in soundtracks for movies, and both directors maybe saw them as a source of cheaper music or something like that. But there was this kind of, I don't know what it was that afforded that moment for this huge, I mean, we think of Vangelis, we think of like Blade Runner or I mean, he's done millions of other things as well. But anyways, I was wondering if that kind of, I don't know, history or genealogy is something that is a part of your own like work with synthesizers and modular, or synthesizers in general, or soundtracks, or if it's just completely not really a part at all.
Wow, that's like one of the earliest records that I remember listening to as a kid was one of Vangelis's like non-soundtrack albums, the Albedo, and I loved and hated the sounds on that album.
Really?
I felt the same way.
And so like the very first, like the first track on that, the track Pulsar, loved the sounds until he did the like pitch bendy, like I've never been a big fan of the like, here's my Moog lead and I turn it off, like I don't want to hear that. But
to me, just real quick, to me that you have an opinion on that, already settles so many questions for me. It doesn't matter. Like, I mean, I do am interested in what you have to say, but the fact that was like even an answer like already tells me what I need to know. But yeah.
So through my years, I always thought of myself as someone who combined orchestral music and electronic music. And Receiver, the first game, was the first game that I ever wrote purely as an electronic score. And even the very first one is actually not, because it's layers of me playing guitar, it's layers of me playing tuba, it's layers of me playing a lot of other instruments to create these drones and ambient spaces. So Receiver 2 is the very first time I was ever like, this is an electronic album and I'm going to embrace its electronic element. And it was, as I said, it was like I wanted to do the modular in order to make that happen. So,
and is it all your gear that you're working with?
Which, what do you mean?
Are you only working with your own gear, or do you have like studio gear that you can use that's not yours, or?
In terms of the synths, it's all mine. I mean, I have friends that I suppose I could borrow stuff from, but yeah, it's mostly my own gear. Yeah, so it's all the all the synth stuff here, and then a wall of acoustic instruments as well. So I love blending the two. So it's actually a lot of fun, I think, pulling those two sounds together. So I don't know if you saw, well, maybe I don't. I also played Freak Boutique back in November, and that was one of the things that I did in that set. Although I'm sorry if you watched that set live, because I had some bad audio issues, but I played a lot of like ethnic flutes into the arbor and into some other things, and created a lot of pads, and then like had the more traditional synths that kind of went on top of that.
There's a real cool modular world this summer with Basspoot was the name of the guy who did a lot of that with some flutes and some kind of Indonesian instruments into his modular. It's fantastic. I think it was June or July. I think it was June.
Okay. Yeah, that's around the time that I was starting to realize that there were other people in the world that also played modular, and so I was still learning. I will have to go back and find that one.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. Was I still talking? I can't remember what I was saying.
All right. I'm going to back up to some of the audience questions.
X7, you're talking now. Sorry, I thought you were.
Yeah, I was. At least this software is smart enough to yell at me when I'm muted. All right, audience questions. So I copied them in here, and I'm going to try this thing, but
cool.
I already typoed. Are there times in a project that are super busy versus less busy, or is it always just busy? Enthusiastic electrons.
So, TV, which I'm actually on a TV show right now, is brutally busy all the time. Well, yeah, I mean, there's this, but but I'm also the music editor on a TV show right now, and basically my life, disappears when I'm on it. TV shows are. You have to produce 35 minutes of music every 8 days. That's scored to picture. So TV is aggressively difficult. Video games, which are currently kind of I just released 2 video game soundtracks in the past year, so I'm really happy with video games at the moment. They tend to be here's a little bit of work at the beginning, write some themes, then they go work on the game for a year, 2 years, and then you come back and you kind of cram right at the last minute. So it's some of both. I can't remember a time that I haven't been busy since I started working, if that. I mean, aside from 2009 when the whole world stopped because of the economic crash, But
there's a serious question in from Colorado Modular Synth Society on YouTube. Anton, where's the cowboy hat?
It's in my closet. I can go grab it if you want it. There is a story behind that hat.
I wanted to hear it. Let's go.
Okay, so it's funny that it's coming from Colorado Modular Synth Society because I grew up in Colorado, and what's that?
High five.
Yeah, so high five. One year I went home for my brother's wedding, and one of my other brothers was like, "Hey, it'd be funny. Your brother hates country music. Let's all go get cowboy hats and wear them to his wedding." And I was like, okay, knowing that we weren't really going to do this. So we go to this place in Lafayette where they have hats for sale, and we're trying on all the hats. Oh no, these look terrible. These look terrible. These look terrible. And then I found this hat, and I was like, oh, this hat looks good. But I looked at the sticker. I was like, oh, I'm not going to spend $80 on a hat. And what's that?
It's probably a good hat.
It's a decent hat. But they were like, oh no, it's on sale right now. They're $20. And so my 3 of my brothers we all bought hats for the 4th brother because we all found. I'll go grab the hat since I'll be right back.
I was say we should have cut him off and just started chanting hat. hat.
I mean, as soon as we asked for the story, we knew we were going to see the hat. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
Thanks, Colorado Modular Synth Society.
All right, I guess I don't know if I can do this with the headphones. It doesn't quite work.
Oh, yeah, that's a good hat.
Yeah, it looks pretty.
Yeah.
It's like bad cowboy hat.
That's a full screen right there.
So, there we go. Thanks, Monoscene. I'm guessing it's Monoscene on Colorado Modular. So there we go. That's my cowboy hat. Anyway, what he's referring to is I've been using this picture I took with the cowboy hat, wearing this Total Joke shirt. It's
that's like your Bandcamp profile picture,
yeah,
isn't it?
exactly.
Yeah,
it's my Bandcamp picture and a couple other places. And I'm wearing this it's a shirt, instead of Joy Division it says Soy Division, and it's the instead of what's the
EKG
Pleasures, no, the EKG, but what's the name of that album?
Yeah, Unknown Pleasures.
What's that? Unknown Pleasures.
Unknown Pleasures. Yeah.
Unknown Pleasures. And so it says it's Soy Division, and then it's the EKG, but it's shaped like a soy sauce bottle, and it says Umami Pleasures. And
nice.
I just I loved that hat and shirt, and so I don't know, somehow it looked, I was like, oh, this looks like it's just a selfie. Anyway, I thought it was funny, so
Great.
I was like, yeah, we'll use that. Funny.
Yeah. Hey, welcome, Sign Mountain.
It's Sign Mountain.
Yeah. All right. Another question from TB. Do you have any tips for people trying to get started in, I guess, scoring?
So that is a question that you can ask. It's one of those things that they'll say you could ask 100 people this question and you'll get 100 different answers. There is no right way. If you're interested in doing video game work, I highly suggest modding as a start. Modding bigger games and getting into the modding community will really give you the practice, because what you can do is you can take an existing game, put your own music in it, and see what it's like to create interactive music. That is a fantastic way to get started. So that's good. And there's a bunch of other modding communities, things like that. And then indie games are great. I kind of inadvertently stole my position with the company that I work with by offering some free stuff. I didn't go in being like, hey, I want to be your composer. Instead, they were working on this game, and I was like, hey, I think this game could use some live ethnic flutes. And then they were like, okay, yeah, let's see what happens. Go ahead and give us your thing. And I gave it to them. They're like, oh, this elevated the existing music. So I started collaborating with them, and then we did the game jams, and then they were like, hey, can you finish the soundtrack instead of, So it happens, just going out and meeting people, talking with people, that's like anything. In terms of the film and TV, that's a nice quote. To get into film and TV, I sort of picked something that I was good at before I moved to Los Angeles, which was I knew my music technology pretty well. And I said, I'm going to get in by helping other composers and assistants and things like that. So just being good at technology will really help in any of these industries for now. They really are technology driven. So selling mixtapes on Sunset Boulevard is not going to be the right way to go, TB. You are correct. That is not the way to go.
It's still an important thing to to consider for your career, maybe.
You never know who's going to listen to your mixtape, but yeah.
That's what happened to Laraji. He was playing music and selling mixtapes in the park, and Brian Eno found him.
I mean, just make sure your blog address is written on the mixtape.
Oh yeah. It's just a card of social medias, right?
Yeah. I mean, is life anything more than that now, right? So and then in all honesty, like if you really want to get into film and TV, if that's kind of your end goal, even I work a lot with bands doing string arrangements as well. It is really useful to become a composer's assistant, and I always hated that term. And I would always do that work and never let myself be called a composer's assistant. And I think that was kind of like bad on me because I wasn't taking the job seriously in the way that I should have been. Because what happens when you are assisting other people is that you have the opportunity to watch them work, watch how they interact with the director, watch how they interact with the dev team, watch how to behave in a recording studio. I remember the first time I did a recording, because I worked in a recording studio in Colorado before I moved to LA. So I was like, I know how a recording studio works, and I could easily do that. And then when you come to LA and you realize that a recording session is costing you a minimum of $10,000 an hour, and you have 50 minutes to record 15 minutes of music times 3, that you have to be super prepared when you go in, and you are never going to understand that until you have experienced it. And being an assistant allows you to be in that room as a fly on the wall. You don't have to say a word. In fact, you should stay out of the way. But if you know that you're there paying attention, you will that's a huge thing for the process. So finding other composers to work for is definitely up there, high on the list of things to do.
You're gonna get a bunch of job applications now.
I can hire some interns for free. I saw someone say intern. I would love to hire people, and I probably will in the right time. The right time is not right now.
I need an intern. My room is filthy.
My email has like 120 unread messages. I could have an intern go through that, right? So, yeah.
Let's go. I'm accepting applications too. So.
There you go. And you could work in you did some radio work too, right?
I did, yeah.
And radio work needs radio work is also one of those things that's best observable.
Yeah.
You just reminded me, like, thinking of the radio, going back to I totally forgot one funny element of my cowboy hat story and my brother's wedding. I know this is totally crazy. The officiant for my brother's wedding was this DJ in Colorado named Willie B. Hung. He's the KBPI rock DJ.
Yeah.
And he was the guy that I listened to rock music while growing up.
Oh, wow.
Like he was the radio voice. And
is he like the Wolfman Jack of Colorado?
Yes, I would say so. And for maybe or not, like any of the Colorado people, my brother was Boomhauer on his show, the one that got
no.
So it was my brother that got on there. Anyway, if any of the Colorado people know what I'm talking about, that will be amazing. But otherwise,
I mean, that was like the only radio station I listened to for a very long time. So.
Oh, were you you were in Colorado too?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I am in Colorado. Yeah.
Oh, you are in Colorado.
Yeah.
Oh, where in Colorado are you?
8,000 feet.
8,000 feet. Okay. So I grew up in Lafayette, and we have property just outside of Boulder up at about 8 to 9,000 feet.
Another quick question coming in from Twitch this time from Superhero on Slip, which is, when working on a movie video game score, do you do the mixing and mastering yourself?
It depends. I have been hired to be both a mixer and a mastering engineer for other people's projects, and when doing it myself, I do. This last soundtrack I mixed and mastered both my soundtrack and sort of there's a companion soundtrack, so yes, I do. I like to give it to somebody else if I can, though, because I do feel like other people taking a listen to what you work on, they hear things that you don't always catch. So, yes.
Okay, well, just on the little intersection between mixing and mastering and the world of modular, for those who haven't caught it, Sign Mountain and the Colorado Modular Synth Society about a week ago put up a video on YouTube interviewing, and I'm sorry for not remembering off the top of my head who they interviewed, but as a professional mastering engineer, was awesome. It's a little over an hour long, but I was picking up tips left, right, and center, and there's kind of some general mastering type advice for those that are interested, but then there was some specific stuff that is pertinent and specific to modular and Eurorack. So anybody that's interested.
Was that the Nathan Moody video?
Exactly. There you go, Nathan.
That was great.
Yeah, it was awesome.
He was on the Modular Modcast this week as well. It's a great interview to check out if you like listening to him talk, which I do.
Yeah, totally.
All right, and there was one more question from Schmooster, or Earth Modular Society, and it's asking if you had any experience with environmental soundscapes. I'm guessing like more like sound design, so in like birds chirping or whatever the environment is, cars driving. Like, do you do any of that kind of stuff as well?
So typically, no. I've kind of avoided doing that, but definitely it's a thing that a lot of people would like for you to have both options in place. So if you enjoy that kind of work and are a composer, there's a lot of need for good effect, people, sound design people. It's a whole other world that is amazing and incredible. So yeah, the people that do, there are a lot of people who start off with the goal of doing video game music will tend to do both. And I think that especially in indie video games, you want to be able to do both.
Right. I mean, you've got to be like the one person sound machine for every aspect of the game for smaller games.
Totally.
I think that goes for a lot of the roles too. Like if you're the developer, you're probably, if you're not the artist, you probably have one artist kind of a thing.
Yeah. It's like growing out of any small business, right? Yeah. We all wear many hats. So.
All right. Does anyone have any more questions before I completely derail us? No. All right. Is it all right if I haven't even talked to you about this. Can I share the declamatory singing video?
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right, I'm gonna try it. I haven't tried sharing a screen, so we're gonna try some stuff. Application window. Yes, yeah. Let's see if this works. Turn it on. Okay.
Oh, hey, cool. Look at that.
Cool. Now, hopefully, it'll have sound.
Youception, YouTubeception.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there we go. You should mute us, Heck.
So this first part was like really weird. I was like, where's this going? So I'm going to skip ahead a minute. It's so weird and cool. Yeah!
What a drop.
Oh, look at that fade out.
So smooth.
So smooth. Now, how do I turn this thing off? There we go. And we're back.
Nice and crazy. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was awesome. So my next question is, when are we going to see something like that on the EMS stream? That was rad.
Thanks. Yeah, I'd love to. Once the TV show I'm working on is on, I plan to start doing a lot more live streaming.
Yes. Yes.
Probably mid-June-ish. So,
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of the current plan. Woke-Ass Messiahs, does your wife like that track any more now? She did the first time she heard it.
Probably not. Man, the poor thing ran in almost in tears the other day during the Freak Boutique. She's like, "This guy, I'm sure his stuff is great, but I can't deal with it."
Was it when I was playing?
No, it was not. It was right after Stu J. I can't remember who that was. I had to turn it off.
Was it after Stu? Oh, right. He started pretty crazy noisy and then worked out.
It did start off
into
with some noise, yeah.
mellow.
And then I saw in the chat later on, people were just like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to check that one out. That's one I missed.
Yeah, let's talk about Freak Boutique for a second. I thought it was a really awesome show. Like Stu J came in hard. Like that was a mix of music I was unprepared for. Like you got some playing live, which on keys, which isn't something we see very often on this channel. We're seeing it more like with folks, some of the newer folks and like enthusiastic electrons and stuff. But like Stu J just went all around the world and ended with some like crazy, I almost want to call it filter sweeps, but it wasn't a filter and it was wailing, and I want whatever module that is, and I'm definitely going to pick Stu J's brain about it. But it was a rad show, like Forrestine with the monstrous sound, and there's like a melody in Forrestine's set that like I can't get out of my head. I think it also has a little bit of glide in there. It's the slow melodies with glide.
I missed it live, and then I caught up with it this morning. It was Forrestine killed it. That was really awesome. Beautiful. I really like Stu J's set. I like. I think it was Modular 10. I think it was called Modular 10. I think it was the last one with the just giant setup. I'm trying to remember that person's name. Chris. Yeah, Modulus. Yeah. Yeah, that was I really enjoyed that as well. That was very just like a lot of the tones that I enjoy, and it was mellow and a progress. It was end to end. It was a pretty awesome show.
Yeah, that last one was an interesting one because similar to like your experience with that other song where you saw Woke Ass Messiah, where you saw the chat was kind of going crazy. Like at some point during that last song, I saw like I was listening on these headphones and they have like pretty even response, and I don't hear a lot of the lower frequencies. And people were like, the bass. So I like went and strapped on my goofy sub-pack backpack, and the thing was like, it was like a damn massage chair for like the entirety of the set. It was amazing. I was like, telling my partner to come over. I was like, here, put this on for a minute. She was like, what's going on? It was so cool. There was so much sub in that one. Yeah, highly recommend that show. Let's see, what else? What else do we want to talk about?
I'm going to give a quick shout out, or
yeah.
Well, let's put it this way: Clubhouse is becoming a thing, and I'm stating the obvious, but in case you haven't heard about Clubhouse, you will. Not just in this community, but pretty much everywhere, and it's a really interesting phenomenon that's happening out there. Speaking of Stu J, he started up Club Eurorack on Clubhouse, and I realized that Clubhouse is a iOS app only. You can't get it on Android, so if you don't have it, there's a little bit. I'm sure that will change over time, but it's a really interesting thing. There's a community that's building out there. A lot of them, if you're starting to also interact on Clubhouse, that Eurorack community is starting to coalesce and create momentum of its own right. You also got people like Richard Devine, Colin Benders has shown up now a couple of times. You've got BT, who isn't strictly modular, but like amazing. And then I just encourage you, if you haven't played around or haven't tried it and you happen to have an iOS app, do it. Try it out. There's all sorts of topics on there, but what we're going to start seeing is every Sunday at 10 a.m. Club Eurorack is going to be doing a series of interviews every Sunday, and I can't remember who's up first. I think it's Alex from WMD that's coming up. But there's going to be a series of folks, and we should jump in and get involved because it's a lot of fun and very cool.
I agree. I mean, it's a bummer that it's iOS only, and I think Andrew Huang just released a video not long ago explaining why it makes more sense to develop on iOS than Android right now if you're trying to make money. But I'm curious about how do you get sound to the I haven't loaded up Clubhouse yet. It's on my to-do list this week once I get caught up with some work stuff. But is it people just like hanging out and talking, or are they like patching into it?
No, it's it's like this, audio only, but. And it sounds like, whoa, what's so interesting about that?
Audio.
I couldn't tell you.
Cool.
You got to just kind of try it, and it's weirdly engaging. I think we're going to start seeing, they've already, in the last version, they started plugging in high def audio options now. So the ability for people to actually start patching in high quality sound. We're going to start seeing more of that, and that'll take Clubhouse into some interesting directions as well.
Well, that's what I was like cringing at, because for those of you who don't have an iPhone, this is the way you get sound into your stupid iPhone, is through this camera dongle thing. And it's so sketchy. Like the connection in the bottom can wiggle loose, in like 2 minutes in, you might not know your sound is no longer going into your phone. There's no monitoring. I think everything around getting sound into the iPhone is just awful.
Yeah.
And if anyone has a better way to do it, tell me, please. Because that's the reason I don't post much on Instagram, is because every time I plug this in, like I'll record a sick 1 minute video, right? And go to replay it, and it's just like room noise and heavy breathing for a minute.
I swear my
Could be
nose
what you're going
whistles
for.
every time I use my phone.
Have to listen to that soundtrack more carefully this time.
I'm the same thing. Like I haven't figured out a good way to get audio into my phone, so I always record video on my phone, which looks great, and then I edit it, and then I record the audio into my computer, and then I line them up in Resolve, DaVinci Resolve, and then make videos. So
right, like I also would be okay with being able to like over the network stream audio from my computer to my iPhone. We have some virtual device magic there. I don't care if there's delay in going that direction, right? Like it's fine, but it is what it is. Anyway. All right. All right. I think it's probably good to call it. We've been going for an hour and 20 minutes. Does anyone else have anything they want to say before we check out?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's a good one.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
Yeah, we learned a crap ton.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate that.
It's fascinating. We have plenty more questions. I think we could go for another hour, but I think in the interest of everybody, let's call it. I'm going to play your music to play us out.
And just before Hex7, just maybe throw out the links again, or the Bandcamp one for Anton.
Oh yeah,
let's other things. Just so those who want to follow up and check it out.
Right. Again, here's Anton's latest album. You can find the link to the blog there as well if you look carefully enough.
I should kill that link.
While it lasts.
But I highly recommend it. The song we opened with, Frederick and I were like just saying the nicest things about before we turned on the stream.
I can tell you about the sounds if you wanted to know how I made it.
Threat Echo Recovery?
Yeah, because it's coming back to me. That was the very first time I ever experimented with polyphony on my modular. So I was using the Tubutech U-Tune, which is a microtonal tuner. I was going out to 4 different sine waves. It was two sine waves on the CSL and 2 sine waves on the DPO, and then the pitch. The pitch, like you were asking about the slew, so I have like the Dipfer slew limiter, and then maths, and then something else. I don't know what I was using, but yeah, it was like totally faking doing polyphony, and then it was that plus the grandmother on the sort of the bass notes, and that's pretty much that whole track.
Yeah, it's a solid one. I was listening to that one, and pretty much.
I wanted to emphasize something real quick. Is that I had gotten your name, so I was like looking up and kind of doing my research on your sound and everything, and I just loved that song. I immediately took to it, listened to it a bunch of times, came on to join, and you guys were listening to it, that same song. And so that means something, right? And not only that, I thought that there was some kind of latency issue. I was like, how is this happening? That doesn't seem to make any sense that this is happening. So, anyways, if that alone kind of like without words testifies to like the coolness of the track. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Well, Alex had to bail. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thanks. It was nice meeting you all.
Thank you, especially Anton. It was really enlightening. Woke, thanks for inspiring us to get Anton on the show. We got to do a sequel at some point.
Yeah.
Anton Part 2.
I'm good part next 2. Week or in June.
June. I'll remember June.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to play some more Anton music. Let's see.
Thanks, guys.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
that and hit play. Oh, hit play. I'm just kidding. I'm going to listen to more Receiver. That's such a good soundtrack. I don't know why it stopped. I broke Bandcamp. Thanks, Internet Explorer. Anyway, what the heck? See you next week.